A star is born. Emma Raducanu celebrates her historic win at the US Open. The teenage Grand Slam champion says it's all still sinking in and there is much more she wants to do.
We rest, recover, and then we go again. That's what we do. I feel like I'm still very hungry and I've got a lot of aspects in my game that I feel I can improve.
At her local tennis club back home, she's already having an effect on those even younger.
It inspires me a lot to play more, to be more enthusiastic about how I play, how I can progress.
We'll be looking at how British tennis can build on this astonishing moment. Also on the programme, the government scraps plans for vaccine passports in nightclubs and large events in England.
It's wheel to wheel, Hamilton number 7, and this time...
And a clash of the Titans, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton spin out of the Italian Grand Prix. Good afternoon. Emma Raducanu, the first British woman Grand Slam singles champion in more than 40 years, has said the reality of what she's achieved at the US Open is still sinking in. The 18-year-old says she will now rest, recover and see what the future holds. After tributes led by the Queen, she also said she was honoured that Her Majesty had noticed her tennis. Here's our sports correspondent, Joe Wilson.
Emma Raducanu.
Stand by for the most fearless, exuberant execution of sporting ability you may ever witness. For Emma Raducanu, standard practice. There were two teenagers in the US Open final, Canadian Leylah Fernandez at the top of the screen. As early as the second game, we saw intense rallies, and we saw Emma Raducanu prevailing here. Both players settled immediately to display a full range of their abilities. Points were hard-earned, skillfully won. Nerves? No sign. Two things were clear. We had a final worthy of the occasion, and Raducanu had the first set, 6-4. She was broken early in the second set, broke back like that.
Wow.
Now Fernandez was struggling to hold her serve. Did you see this shot coming?
Oh my God!
Did we see any of this coming? 44 years of waiting, 1 hour 51 on court, and one more serve. It is right to realise what this means for British tennis, but also for world tennis. It was an outstanding match, an astounding champion. Really, it's yours. It's all yours.
We rest, recover, and then we go again. That's what we do. I feel like I'm still very hungry and I've got a lot of aspects in my game that I feel I can improve.
If sport exists to uplift and to amaze, Emma Raducanu is already at the pinnacle. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Well, Emma Raducanu's success is being celebrated across the country and already inspiring many younger players. But how can British tennis capitalise on it and build a wider base of, hopefully, future champions? Our sports editor, Dan Rowan, is at the National Tennis Centre in Roehampton. Dan?
Well, after arguably the most unexpected success in British sporting history, Emma Raducanu's barely believable triumph may seem to lots of people like something of an overnight sensation, but in truth it's been years in the making, and much of her preparation and hard work's been done here at the Lawn Tennis Association's headquarters. Now, they made her one of their professional scholars when she was 16, and it's an investment that has paid off in a way that few will have foreseen.
From the moment she first picked up a racket as a precocious 6-year-old, it was clear Emma Raducanu had potential, but no.
She's a spectacular tennis player and she's going to be a superstar. She's got it all going on and she will still get better. I mean, there's places where she can get better in her game, definitely. She's 18, but there are no holes in her game. And at 18, that is extraordinary.
An audience of more than 9 million watched Raducanu make tennis history last night. This how much it meant at the club in Beckenham, where her fairy tale began 12 years ago. This morning, local youngsters telling us they're keener than ever to take to the court.
It inspires me a lot to play more, to be more enthusiastic about how I play, how I can progress, and yeah, all of those different experiences are really nice.
I watched a little bit last night, and my parents told me that she won, and I already knew that she played here, and I thought it was really cool, and so I wanted to come here today to see how well I can train here today.
44 years had passed since British tennis last had a women's Grand Slam winner.
Yes, she's done it.
Many trying and failing to emulate Virginia Wade's Wimbledon triumph until now. Over the last decade, Sir Andy Murray put the pride back into the men's game,
Second match, Murray.
but felt more should have been done to capitalise on his success. The Lawn Tennis Association has gained credit this time for the way it spotted and then supported Raducanu from the age of 9. But today the man in charge of the sport told me the Emma effect must be harnessed.
She's taken it to the widest possible audience. You can't not be inspired by what we've seen over the last few days and the last few weeks. And so, yeah, for us it's a very important moment. We want to make sure that we welcome her back home and make sure that we can tell her story for the benefit of the sport.
A moment that tennis must seize then,
yeah,
I think.
Absolutely.
Consider the fact that just a few weeks ago Raducanu was sitting her A level. She was ranked outside the top 300 tennis players in the world, and of course she was a qualifier at the US Open. There's always concerns about whether tennis is too expensive, the cost of club fees, the state of park courts, but if this remarkable story doesn't inspire a new generation of players, then perhaps nothing will. Of course, even Andy Murray didn't win with such confidence and such aplomb, nor did his success necessarily translate into a surge in participation, but the hope will be that Raducanu's eloquence, her youth and her relatability is transformative, not just for British tennis, but for British women's sport as well.
Dan, thank you. Dan Rowan there, our sports editor. The government has scrapped plans to introduce vaccine passports for entry to nightclubs and some live events in England at the end of this month. The Health Secretary Sajid Javid said they will not now come in, as other ministers had said they would just days ago. Similar measures are set to be introduced in Scotland. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
This is the Park Life Festival in Manchester. Tens of thousands of people in Heaton Park this weekend. Nightclubs and perhaps events like this in England face the prospect of having to demand vaccine passports by the end of the month. But
I've never liked the idea of saying to people you must show your papers or something to do what is just an everyday activity. But we were right to to properly look at it, to look at the evidence. And whilst we should keep it in reserve as a potential option, I'm pleased to say that we will not be going ahead with plans for vaccine passports.
The organiser of this event, who also advises Manchester's Labour Mayor on the nighttime economy, says it's a good move.
I'm delighted, and what a U-turn. So we've heard all week, haven't we? Or let's go back to a few months and they were saying, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. And then the narrative changed, didn't it? To we're now going to do it. But again, we've seen them do another U-turn. I mean, that's what this government specialises in, isn't it? U-turns. But I have to say, this one, I absolutely welcome it. It's the right thing.
And yes, ministers have danced around a fair bit on all of this. Here's the Vaccines Minister on Wednesday saying they're a good idea because
if you look at what has happened in other countries where nightclubs were opening and then shutting again, opening and shutting again, is that we want to avoid that disruption.
And look at this, the Culture Secretary on Friday.
We will almost certainly be doing it for nightclubs.
Well, I just think this adds to a general sense of complacency that's around at the moment, and again to the confusing mixed messages we keep getting from government. Only a couple of days ago, we heard from both the Vaccines Minister and the Culture Secretary that there would be the introduction of vaccine passports, and now it's not going to happen.
Labour reckon the about turn is a shambles, but add,
I think the problem with vaccine passports is people thought that was the key to everything. And the point about nightclubs and crowded events is you've got to have other measures in place. They've got to be well ventilated. You've got to have clean air.
In Scotland, people will need to prove they've been fully vaccinated to enter nightclubs and other large events from the 1st of October. In Wales, ministers will decide what to do this week. There are no current plans for vaccine passports in Northern Ireland. Chris Mason, BBC News.
Let's bring you up to date now on the latest UK coronavirus figures. Nearly 30,000 new infections were recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means an average of 36,000 cases per day in the last week. There were 8,098 people in hospital being treated for coronavirus as of Wednesday. 56 deaths were reported in the latest 24-hour period. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive test. It takes the average number of deaths per day in the last week to 139. Now, leading trade unions are warning of jobs being at risk unless the UK steps up investment in green infrastructure and progress towards meeting its net zero target. At their annual conference, the TUC is particularly highlighting the threat to those employed in heavy industries such as iron and steel. Our business correspondent Katie Prescott reports.
Making steel green. In Sweden, they're using new technology to produce it without using coal. But it's normally a more dirty business. Workers in blast furnaces like this one fear that if the UK doesn't go the same way, they could lose their jobs.
The whole infrastructure needs looking at, and it all needs to be coordinated. People are, where am I going to be working? What's going to happen to the plant that I work on at this moment in time? And what does the future look like?
There's no doubt that industry will have to undergo a green revolution, and that will inevitably have an impact on jobs. But just how severe that impact will be will depend on how it's planned.
Can the summer dream continue for the British team?
At a time when there are already so many demands on the public purse. As this year's Trade Union Congress gets underway, it's the major talking point.
Companies are going to think about locating in countries where they get support from their government to make those adaptations, to invest in the new technology, to think about how you produce those currently heavy carbon goods in a low carbon way. And that's why the UK government needs to step up so that our businesses can compete.
The government says that the TUC's claims are untrue, saying in recent months we've secured record investment in wind power, published a world-leading hydrogen strategy, pledged £1 billion in funding to support the development of carbon capture and launched a landmark North Sea transition deal. It's launched an independent group to look at developing good quality green jobs. Many say the move to a green economy, handled well, brings opportunities.
If we can move people towards safer, healthier, better rewarded, remunerated careers with better well-being that may leave some of those jobs behind, that's probably on balance a good thing.
The challenge is building a low-carbon future that includes industry and workers. Something else for next month's budget. Katie Prescott, BBC News.
Now with news of a dramatic moment in the Italian Grand Prix and the rest of the day's sport, let's join Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes. Hello, Lizzie.
Hello, thank you, Mishal. Good evening. Yes, the fierce rivalry between Lewis Hamilton and F1 Championship leader Max Verstappen took another dramatic turn today as they heavily collided in the Italian Grand Prix, with Hamilton only narrowly avoiding serious injury. The race was won by Daniel Ricciardo, but there is an ongoing investigation to find out who was responsible for the crash. Joe Corrie reports.
This season is being defined by Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen's rivalry. A collision between the two at Silverstone in July saw Verstappen taken to hospital and Hamilton accused of putting his life in danger. With neither willing to give an inch at Monza, it happened again.
That's what you get when you don't leave the space.
The world champion was left with a sore neck from contact with the Dutchman's tyre. Without the protective halo above his head, the outcome doesn't bear thinking about. Verstappen out of his car quickly, in no mood to check in on his rival, before Hamilton also emerged. Another monumental moment in their battle for the championship, which could go to the final race. Their misfortune, though, was McLaren's good luck. Without Verstappen chasing him, Daniel Ricciardo delivered his first win for 3 years, his team's first since 2012.
Start the celebrations for McLaren. Ricciardo's done it.
And thanks to Britain's Lando Norris, their first one too for a decade. All talk, however, will be of that crash and how much worse it could have been. Joe Corrie, BBC News.
Liverpool could go joint top of the Premier League today. They're at Leeds United, who are yet to win this season. It's the second half at Ellen Road and Liverpool are leading 2-0. Mo Salah, one of the scorers for his 100th Premier League goal. The game has been halted at the moment after a serious injury. But if the score stays like this, Liverpool will be behind Man United and Chelsea on goal difference. There were some fine saves in a feisty Edinburgh derby, but it ended in a goalless draw as Hearts and Hibs both missed out on a chance of going top of the Scottish Premiership above leaders Rangers. Brighton atop of the Women's Super League ahead of Arsenal and Manchester United on goal difference. Champions Chelsea inflicted Everton's second 4-0 defeat in a row. The prolific Australian striker Sam Kerr scored twice, and it could have been many more as Chelsea had 27 shots on goal. Lee Westwood will make a record-equalling 11th appearance for Europe in golf's Ryder Cup later this month. He did just enough at the PGA Championship at Wentworth to qualify ahead of Ireland's Shane Lowry, who could still be picked as a wild card when captain Porrick Harrington announces his team later this evening. The tournament was won by America's Billy Horschel. And more tennis history could be made at the US Open tonight as Novak Djokovic aims to break the record for the most men's singles titles at a Grand Slam. You can find out more on the BBC Sport website. But that's it from me. Back to you, Mishal.
Lizzie, thank you very much. And there's lots more throughout the evening on the BBC News channel. We're back with the late news at 10 o'clock tonight. Now on BBC One, it is time for the news wherever you are. Goodbye. A team at Cranfield University is competing in an international competition to develop a robot that does the shopping in supermarkets.